Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down a 16 game tick multi-box sorter by 7777 and about 16 more sevens along with Vincent. And today we're actually getting into the guts of the system and breaking down the main slice and how that works. So let's get straight into it. So in the previous video, which I highly recommend you guys watch, we broke down about these 3 block or 3 wide part, which is all the system control for the main input, and how we take the boxes, take the box, take an item out and compare it against the set. And this is where it becomes a multi-box sorter. So if you didn't understand the terminology, a multi-box sorter takes a box and tries to take the first item, and if it matches one of the items in one of these chests right here, it'll send the whole box with the same item added back into the box and send it down into this line right here by being broken by this piston, obviously to be separated. Now the use cases are few and far between, but regardless, they have their place in definitely parallelization of inputs to make your storage system faster, as opposed to using a set-based system. I think I have one all the way over there. I've broken down similar set-based parallel unloaders in the past, but this is an alternative way to get around it. If you just separate the boxes using like a variable sorter and then have this kind of system, what you can then do is have unloaders for each of the systems and run it perfectly fine and parallelize your inputs. Anyways, now we're actually going to get into the meat and potatoes of the system, which is the slice right here. And yeah, let's get straight into it. What we're going to do is take the Axiom tool right here. I'm going to select all of this so we can just move it out of the way and we can get to working. Just one last thing. We're going to move this like here so we have a better reference. All you got to know is the item is coming in from here to this side, and we have the shulker box making its way right here. So the shulker box has a little bit of delay. I'm not going to do the exact hopper lengths to get the same delay if they're input at the same time, because that's a bunch of work. All you have to know is item comes in here. So when the item makes its way in here, I'm going to break this so you can see the hopper. We have the variable filter I was talking about, and we also have this little overflow line, you could say, just like a filter to run the variable filter, you could say, to state the obvious. But essentially what happens is when an item gets added, this comparator right here will turn or realize, hey, we have an extra item, power this redstone wire right here to power this comparator, turning off this redstone torch to allow this line to unpower, to allow both of these hoppers to unlock and pull the item. Now, the reason we can do this is because once this hopper gets unlocked, it will not have used its cooldown because we have the item pushing, or the hopper pushing in. You can see this in the continuation of the slice. So as soon as this gets unlocked, we can, coming from this line previously, but when this gets unlocked, it immediately pulls the second redstone dust. It immediately pulls the redstone dust from out of this filter chest and puts it in this hopper. But then 4 ticks later, or 6 ticks later, this hopper gets unlocked, allowing the first item to get pulled, and then now both of these are on cooldown. What ends up happening is the item then gets immediately pulled down into this hopper because there is the same thing. This has no cooldown because it just went like that. And then we have the 8-tick cooldown for this hopper to push into this dropper. In this little quick succession, I'm just going to update this to remove all the hopper locking, but that wasn't important. But that's where we get to talk about this line right here. Essentially, when this gets into overflow from the redstone being added, whether it's 1 or 2, this will get powered anyways. This dispenser with a water bucket will power. When this dispenser with a water bucket powers, it'll spit its water into these stairs right here. I'm just going to add it so when we run this system, it actually works. When we run it, what happens is it updates this observer right here. And when it updates this observer, it updates this observer, and then you can see we have quite a few signals coming out. The first one I'm going to talk about is this observer right here, because it's so nice and simple. It just powers this redstone wire right here, which also powers the snow block, but we don't have to worry about that for now. So this observer will just power this redstone wire, which won't power the snow block because the line is facing like that, and that's why we use the repeaters. But what this does, as you can see right here, it powers the line to add 15 signal strength to the clock. So that way the clock doesn't burn out and lock up the system on itself. So as soon as we start getting items through the variable filter, whether they're getting filtered or not, as long as they're anywhere in the line, they will update and power on the system or keep the clock running. Now the other lines go this way, and this will be the first signal, but it'll be in parallel with this signal right here, or run at the same time, I should say. And then 2 ticks later, we have the signal going up here. I'm just removing hopper locking. So now that I just updated that to get rid of the hopper locking, so we have the 2 ticks right here, because we have 2 ticks right here. So all of these are this redstone repeater powering these 2 droppers right here, this redstone block powering this dropper right here, also powers at the same time. So this acts as an instant dropper line. And then we have the next section. So what we have is the update from this line right here to power this dropper right here. And then what we have is this later on coming from this observer right here to power this redstone wire and then unpower it, which acts or powers this observer to power twice from the powering and then the unpowering to shoot, first powering this dropper into, or this dropper to power, pushing it into this dropper, and then these 2 droppers to power on the second powering, because it goes down to up, and like I said before. So the reason we have this dropper layout right here is because when we power all the way here, we actually fire this dropper, and this is an attempt to push the item into the slice. Now obviously we will be only letting one through, so if it isn't, like for example if it's a smooth scored stair, it'll try to get pushed into here and it won't. But if we have pulled this item out and we shove the item, we'll actually be able to shove it back in, and that's how we preserve the set. Now if it isn't, it just goes down here into this hopper right here, and then we use the comparator and repeater like I was talking about earlier to run the next slice, and this will move into the next slice in 8 game ticks. So the last thing I want to talk about is this observer powering this line right here. And what we do is we actually run this line with the timing, so that way it powers this hopper as soon as the first item makes its way through from this hopper that we were talking about all the way at the beginning into this dropper. And that keeps it in place, that way this line or all of these lines can run, shooting it all the way up and pushing it either into the hopper or the redstone or the chest. Now how this works is if it isn't a item in the set, we wouldn't have pulled out more than one item. Everything would be jolly good, and we just pull the item out and we push it and then we shoot it up. But if you think about the case where we did pull out an item, well, we have 2 items. The first item will make its way down just like a or an item that's not in the slice. It'll get pushed and shot back up, but this time it'll get moved into the chest. And then now we have the second the second item still running through the slice, being able to make its way into this dropper right here, where we will actually not get powered and we'll be able to make our way down into this dropper right here. And this is where we do the final recombination. So just a quick catch up, what we'll also have is this hopper right here with the shulker box, which will push the items into this hopper right here. Now once we get the dropper in this hopper right here, we have this comparator to read out to power or unpower this redstone torch, to unpower this redstone repeater, to unlock this hopper, to allow the shulker box to get pulled out immediately, and then 8 ticks later pushed into this dispenser. And then we also have the 2 ticks right here from this comparator to power this line. And what we're worried about right now is the powering of this dispenser right here to then push its water bucket into the smooth square stairs, updating this observer to power these 2, but because it's the first update, it will just be pushing the item from this dropper into this dropper. Now, at the same time that this happens, this torch will also unpower, unpowering this redstone repeater to retract. And then what happens is we have the dropper. Because it's moved its item, these two lines should now unpower. The reason this piston line won't unpower just yet is because we have the nice delay of the repeater to allow everyone to do its thing down here before it re-extends and breaks the block. And this is where we get into the really interesting part. Essentially what happens is, because we have the dropper right here powering the comparator to do this whole system again, if we just count the ticks, we have 2 ticks here and then we have 2 ticks here. And similarly, so what we have is the 2 ticks from this comparator and then we have the 2 ticks from this observer. Similarly on this side, we have the 2 ticks here, the redstone torch getting unpowered and flicking up this observer to update this observer to power 2 ticks and power this block. And that powers both of these droppers. But what we also have happening at the same time is we have this unpowering, or this redstone torch unpowering this repeater, or in this case it'll be repowering this repeater to power this dispenser. And this is where we get to the instant nature of this work, or how this works. What's going to happen is that this dispenser is going to place its box, this dropper is going to shoot the item into the box, restoring it to its full nature, and then this piston is going to extend, breaking the box all in the same tick. Now you might say, how is that possible? You can't control that, it's within a tick. And this is where we get to the redstone update order. So now that we're looking at what happens inside the tick, we can actually use these two helpful diagrams. Now, these were both made by Cubic Meter in his video, We Made Helldivers in Minecraft, where he uses these two diagrams to explain how you use subtick mechanics to create wireless redstone. A really good video that goes into the depths of how to actually use these for your own things. But for the sake of this video, we're just looking at the application for our 1-tick box recombiner. And so if we look right here, we have the dropper and dispenser right here, as I've drawn an arrow, and it shows that the dropper and dispenser will happen at the same point in the tick regardless, and we don't have to worry about this. But what we have to do is worry about what cues the events. So for placing the shulker box, it gets powered by a repeater, and then putting the item inside the shulker box, we use an observer right here. And we can see, because the repeater has more priority, and it's specifically a 2-tick repeater, but that's still above an observer, this repeater and consequently the dispenser will place the shulker box first, while the observer and the dropper will go second, causing the item to be placed inside the shulker box. Now, this is all held or done within the perform tile events phase of the tick, and we don't have to worry about the piston, because when we create the piston head, that's in perform block events, but when we move the piston head, that's update block entities, which is breaking the shulker box. And that is done well after, as you can see, there's a big gap between that and all of this happening right here. So that is how we get a subtick or 1-tick box placement, an item being placed into the box, and then the box being broken all in 1 tick, nice and neatly like so. So as you can see, because this dropper gets powered by an observer and this dropper gets powered by a repeater, this dispenser, sorry, is powered by a repeater, it will actually have priority. And obviously the piston is in a completely different section. So what ends up happening is, within the tick, this dispenser places down the shulker box. This dropper shoots the redstone, or the item, in this case the redstone dust, into the shulker box, and then this piston extends later down the tick. And what ends up happening is we have a perfect box break in 1 tick, or box combiner all in 1 tick, and the box gets just shot down anywhere onto the ground. And that is the whole system. Now, one last thing we need to talk about is what happens to the box. Well, what we do is we use a significantly less fancy box recombiner, but we use the same principles where the item gets pushed down into here. We use the update of the item getting pushed into here to power this block, unpowering this redstone torch, updating this observer, to then power this repeater, powering these 2 droppers to shoot it down. We also have the update to this to power this block right here to power these two to shoot the dropper. And off of this update right here, we have this observer right here powering this line right here to update this shulker line, or for the shulker box. So it powers this to shoot the dropper, and then ignore that. What we have is the box coming from this redstone repeater updating this to break it, because this is actually getting powered by the hopper locking line, but that's a little bit hard to notice, and that just breaks it. And that's obviously divided and is not as cool as the instant breaking as we have over there. Overall, a super cool system. It uses some really fun mechanics, especially in the redstone torch over there, and the recombination chamber is what I'm calling it now, I guess. Uses some great sub-tick mechanics, and it's just a really fascinating thing of how they're able to get this done so quickly, or get the stuff done so quickly. Obviously its use cases are limited, but it's just still an awesome little piece of tech. So thank you so very much for watching, and yeah, I really hope you enjoyed, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.